Alright, so this DIY is going to be a little different. I want to give a huge shout out to GeoShield for making this possible. They're a high quality tint provider, so I reached out to them to see if they'd collaborate with me on this project, and they said yes. I let them know I'm a DIYer and that I wanted to try installing tints myself. So they sent over the ceramic tint pre-cut kit, instructions and all. And the goal here is to show you that with some patience, you can install one of these tint kits yourself. Now, GeoShield doesn't sell directly to the general public, so they have a distributor called TintZoom. You can order the tints and some of these awesome accessories they provided right on their site, and I'll show you how to do that later. But for now, let's get started. You'll need a spray bottle and some baby shampoo to get it going. The instructions said to fill up the 32-ounce bottle and then put about 3 teaspoons of baby shampoo in there. After that, I started unpacking the pre-cut tints. Be very gentle with these because even the highest quality tints can crease. And with this being a pre-cut kit, you'll notice the windows are already perfectly cut out. In general, multiple windows are on the same roll. So I started cutting these out just to make my pieces more manageable. If you find large pieces that aren't part of the window, you should hold on to them. They're good to practice with. I had never tinted anything myself, so playing around with the scrap piece gave me a feel for how the tint would behave on the window. And before you start, if you don't want to get your interior wet, you can always cover it up with plastic and tape. Now, this car doesn't have a frame around the window, so the window lowers every time you open the door. That means we have to trick it into thinking the door is closed by pushing this latch. This reveals the whole window, and now we can start. I sprayed the outside of the window with the soapy solution from a moment ago and started scrubbing it down. Then I used the squeegee from the kit to clear off some of that soap. And it's probably a good idea to do this a couple of times just to make sure that this work surface is pretty clean. Then I sprayed the outside of the window one more time and laid my tint on it. Now, the tint has a protective plastic liner, and you want to make sure that that liner is on the outside. There's adhesive between the liner and the actual tint film. The tint's going to be installed from the inside, and you want to make sure that that adhesive is facing the window. Car windows have a curve to them, but the film comes flat. And even with a pre-cut kit, you still have to shrink the tint a little bit just to account for the curve for a perfect fit. Line the film up as best as you can and start working down the soap from top to bottom. And remember to be gentle because film can crease. If it looks like I'm being a little aggressive here, just remember that this is fast forwarded. Now, these are the pieces that we're trying to work out. And remember, it happens because the film is flat, but the window is curved. These are called fingers. So I grabbed my heat gun, I applied a little bit of heat to the area, and pulled up the film to let it shrink. Make sure not to stay in the same area for too long, because you could damage the film. Then I grabbed my squeegee again, and started working the film down one more time. You'll notice the film still has fingers, but they've gone down in size drastically. Keep applying heat lightly to the area and continue working those fingers down. This can take a little while, so be sure to take your time, but your goal is to have the tint sit flat on the window. And once it does, you can start prepping the inside of the window. I made sure to clean the seals because dirt tends to get trapped there. You don't want that dirt to contaminate your film. That's how you get those dust specks on it. So I made sure to clean the inside of the window very thoroughly. Then I squeegeed everything away and repeated the process. This little razor accessory is nice too, just because it helps clean off any gunk you may have missed, or adhesive from stickers and such. So with everything prepped, I took the liner off the tint and got ready to bring it over to the inside. Keep in mind the tint has adhesive on it, so you also want to spray it every step of the way. Make sure your hands are very clean when you're transferring this over. I did this quick, but also very carefully to avoid any contamination on my film. I started working the film down and paying special attention to the seals. If it gets stuck and you force it to move, it might crease. And that's why this other little prying tool is super helpful. You can use it to lift up the seals while you slide the film in. Once it's in place, make sure you align it. Try to make sure that the gap on all the edges is nice and even. Once that's ready, you can start squeegeeing out the soap from top to bottom. Be sure to really take your time on this and make sure everything stays lined up throughout the process. Once I got to about the halfway point from top to bottom, I started working the soap straight down. And once your film's laying flat, you can just give it a little bit of heat on the outside edges, and this is going to help secure it in place. Heat guns are cheap and they work great. I'll link mine in the description. Once I got my rhythm, the rest of the windows were a breeze. And just like with anything else on this channel, I really took my time. If you're finding some of this insight useful, be sure to like and subscribe. That kind of support makes these videos possible. The rear passenger windows were even easier than the front ones, just because the mirrors didn't get in the way. The quarter panel window on this car doesn't have much of a curve, so the install is pretty straightforward. Instead, I'm going to show you something much more difficult. If you don't buy a pre-cut kit and just get the film, things can get complicated pretty quickly. So using one of the scrap pieces, I'm demonstrating that process on a small scale. You would essentially have to cut the film so that it's a perfect match to the shape of the window, and you also have to make sure not to damage your window in the process. And that's why a pre-cut kit is a better option for us non-professionals. The back window tends to be a little harder than the other windows. It just has so much more surface area, which means more room for errors, and it's a lot more curved than the other windows too. But I followed the same process, and I really made sure to take my time on the shrinking. Again, because of that curvature. And on this specific car, removing the back panels was actually pretty helpful. They pop right off when you pull on them. Just be sure to cover any electrical components with tape. I really took my time with this shrink because of the giant curve, and I made sure to use a felt card just to really push those fingers out. After that, the installation was similar to the other ones, but on a much larger scale for sure. I started from top to bottom, and then pushed the soapy water out to the edges. And the window was pretty dark after that. I'm gonna give you a quick look at the final product, but let me show you how to order the tints. You can go to TintZoom.com and look up your car. I had heard great things about GeoShield's Pro Nano ceramic, and that's the reason I reached out to them in the first place. From there, you can just pick the tint percentage, and it's broken down by different sections based on what windows you want. This percentage refers to how much light passes through the tints. I chose 20% all around for mine, but just keep in mind most SUVs have the back windows tinted already from the factory. And that's pretty much it, so let's see how it came out.